All right, we are live.
So when you did the analysis, did you follow off the study guide or did you just answer the questions that were in things to think about I don't even know what section it was in. What was it in? The prep assignment. Did you just answer those questions or did you actually go into the study guide?
Well, I watched all the videos with Brother Crawford in them,
Okay.
and those seem to be following the study guide.
Okay.
And so I just kind of did the case with Brother Crawford's videos.
Okay. Because I kind of did it half and half because I thought, well, it's just kind of asking me generalized questions, and then the other ones are more specific. So I tried to go in and answer those, but it was kind of it was kind of messed up. It wasn't very clear how to do it. So
No, it wasn't clear at all to me either. So I was just kind of like, well, I guess I'll get my grade back and see where I need to improve
I
from
I
there.
think on this first week he's not going to grade it. The fact that you probably did it was probably a worth material. So
Hopefully.
I hope so too.
All right.
Okay. So
All right. So this is supposed to take us an hour
okay.
to talk about everything. So
And then
question one.
yeah, we can just start with question one. And then I think at the end where we kind of do a summary, we're supposed to timestamp it so that you can just go in and watch the summary or something.
Yeah, we'll have to remind me and I'll write it down. So when I turn
Okay.
in the link,
Okay.
I will be able to just put it in there for the TA.
Okay. I don't know if there is a TA in this class. Is there? Did they ever fill in that information?
You know, I'm not sure. One of my classes talked about a TA, and I guess I just assumed it was this class. So I'm not
I
sure if there is
for
a
some
TA.
reason I think it was this class, but I actually started this class last semester or in the spring semester, but then ended up dropping it because I just had some personal issues that I had to deal with. And they
Mhm.
actually had a TA at first, and then the TA dropped out like a week into the class, and so it messed everything up. So the class kind of got like a weird start to it, and I thought this is going to be a disaster, so I'm just going to drop it anyways. So I've kind of already done a little bit of this, so it's not that bad. It's just different because I didn't get too involved in it. I'm sorry. I have like a hair stuck in my mouth and it's driving me crazy.
Well, that's
Okay.
the worst. You can't
Um,
find it.
there we go. Finally got it. Okay. So let's just start with question one. Or actually, let's see what we're doing. We're covering Dr. John's products, which is a spin toothbrush. It's a electric toothbrush. It's the cheapest one on the market. Not necessarily cheap, meaning bad, but cheap, or than the other ones that are on the market. So, okay. So, question was, what do you think that Osher's process of identifying opportunities and building companies? So, I think what they're talking about is building the company, which would be on page 3, and then he has his what wrong expectation mistakes, and then also on page 4 his general mistakes. So that's kind of what I feel like he's gone after of when he's been identifying opportunities but also building companies, is because he feels that these are the mistakes that he's made in the past, and so he tries to make sure that he has this guideline to not fall into the traps that he's made before.
Yeah, I would agree. When I read that question, I just think, well, his process must be very good because he's done so well. You read of what he's done throughout his life and the different companies he worked
Mm-hmm.
for or built and everything he's done. And obviously, he knows what he's doing. So I think if anybody were to say that his process wasn't good, like, there's no, like, I don't know. He obviously knows what he's doing. Um, I would agree that if you go through those questions, I mostly for that question read the section, I think it's above that. It's the background of just John Osher.
Yeah.
Um, and just his whole thing. For me, when I think of how he does things, it's like he looks at an industry and he has like questions in his mind about it. Like theirs was the baby industry where he's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
nothing's been going on, so what can I do to kind of boost it. And then he does that and he's very successful. Or I'm trying to think what else he was into, but it just seems like, or he'll see like a market that's not completely having its needs met, like the toothbrush. Yeah. And he goes, I can find a way to meet that need.
Yeah.
And then he's able to do it.
I kind of feel like he approaches it a little bit differently of where he finds a need, but it's not necessarily a personal need. As I've been like taking all these classes throughout this degree, I've kind of discovered that a lot of people approach their entrepreneurship as like they have a problem and they're trying to find a solution to the problem that they have. And so, but he doesn't seem to do that. It doesn't seem like he necessarily had a problem with baby products. He just kind of viewed an industry that was lacking something and then thought, oh, I can make something to be able to create this rather than trying to fulfill one of his own needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. He's definitely, yeah, I think that's one of his big strengths is he's not focused on, oh, what do I necessarily think is cool or what do I necessarily think people needs. He looks at it as a whole, and he's got to use data to be able to do that and analyze exactly what it is that's needed in these different industries.
Okay. Do you think that we can move on to number 2?
Yes.
Or actually, we kind of, I think we actually kind of answered that already, but we can go back and kind of do it. That he was, so who is John Osher and how does he come up with his ideas?
Well, he's an entrepreneur. It says like that he started as a teenager in the 1960s, where he started his earring business. That was a huge success.
Mm-hmm.
And that just allowed him to make a lot of money, and then he sold it. Seems to be how he does things. He comes up with ideas, and then he makes a lot of money on them, and then just sells them and goes and lives on the beach or something. I read that somewhere.
Yeah, it kind of seems like he just kind of he takes a market that already exists and then figures out how to expand it just a little bit more rather than coming up with something that, I hate to say it, that wasn't unique or original, but that he just takes something, he kind of takes like a B+ market and then figures out how to expand it so that it can become an A as opposed to just kind of floating above the surface.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we answered how he comes up with his ideas. Okay. Number 3, is the spin brush a good idea, and how does John evaluate opportunities? So I think the spin brush is a good idea. I myself use an electric toothbrush. I have for years. I never used the spin brush per se. But I think that the spin brush is kind of a lower price point, and a lot of people aren't willing to spend $50, $100 on a toothbrush, and then you have to buy the replacement heads at another $12 to $15 a piece after that. With the spin brushes, they seem to last 3 to 4 months, and then you're spending probably $20 to $50 a year as opposed to more than that with the more expensive electric toothbrushes. And then if it breaks or you lose it or drop it and it's whatever, you're probably not going to be so upset, or if you're out $6, $7 as opposed to $50 or $60 or $100.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I think it's an amazing idea. I just think how he came up with it was just brilliant because, I mean, he was looking at the market and he says, well, you have your people that are okay buying these $50 toothbrushes to get that quality. Then you have people who just like the traditional toothbrush, and then people that can't afford to have the electric toothbrush. And so he's like, we'll develop a toothbrush that meets all 3 needs by having some of the bristles that move and then some that just stay still, and then having that cheap price point. He was able to, I think, grab a bunch of people from all 3 of those little toothbrush segments.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was so successful, is he met so many needs with that one toothbrush.
Well, and it's kind of also a thing for somebody who wants an electric toothbrush, and if they travel with all of the, like, you know, TSA regulations changing on a regular basis, of where you can't, certain things you can't carry in your luggage, you can put them in your, you know, checked luggage, but you can't have them in your carry-on. This was kind of like a perfect thing where you could pop the batteries out of it, still stick it in your checked luggage. It worked. You had it when you were done, you know, and if it ended up for some reason getting removed from your luggage, you're not going to be upset by it, because it was $7-8, and you know that was a wash. If it disappears, you can always buy another one.
Yeah, no, I think it was a good idea. And I think the way he came up with it, but I think we talk about that later.
Yeah, the second part of the question is, how does John evaluate opportunities? I think that kind of talked about in his background, but then also in the aspect of building his companies. Or I'm trying to figure out whether the question goes, does he evaluate opportunities in regards to the spin brush itself?
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't quite sure. I felt like some of these questions were very repetitive, kind of like, how does John come up with ideas, and then how does John evaluate opportunities? I know they're different questions, but
yeah,
I think the answers are very similar.
Well, I think I'd probably answer it this way: is how does he evaluate the opportunities? Is that he knows his 16 mistakes entrepreneurs don't have to make, like he has that list. So he already has an outline of what he doesn't want to do. And so he's kind of safe to follow those realms, and I mean those ideas, and to keep you know, his company in check. And in a lot of ways, as he's been developing this, he's stuck to those pretty well, of, you know, keeping, not hiring a lot of people, um you know, not having, I guess it's 7, is have too many unnecessary partners, um you know, trying to find cheap ways to make stuff, but not necessarily the cheapest, and then just not taking on a bunch of overhead and are expanding too quickly. I think that's a lot of where people, when their businesses, is they kind of start making a little bit of money, and the demand gets higher, and then they're just like, oh no, we have to expand very big and figure out how to do this. And that's where they end up spending way too much money and expanding, and then they end up failing because they're not growing at the rate that their demand is, as opposed to, I think personally, I'd rather have a company who is in higher demand and then not be able to meet that demand completely, than to be expanded and have it saturate the market to where there was nothing that I could do to bring it back.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think he definitely looks at the risks. I remember it talking a lot about his competitors and how that was a major concern for him. But he must have thought that at least developing the spin brush, because it hadn't been that low cost, higher quality toothbrush, hadn't been put on the market yet, that he felt the risk was worth entering that industry, even with those major competitors that he was going to have to deal with at some point.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I can't remember exactly where I read this, but it was kind of like you have your 3 major competitors. Of, you have Oral-B, Colgate, and then
I can't hear you.
sorry.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, so people keep, just sorry, since I'm on my phone, it keeps kicking me out.
No, you're fine.
And they keep calling.
Oh,
So, you know, we kind of have the Oral-B, the Colgate, the Crest, and then there's a couple of other companies, you know, like on this, the exhibit too, that talks about things. But it's kind of a locked market. Like, most people don't decide, oh, I'm going to develop a brand new toothpaste and try to come in with this. I mean, yeah, you've seen things like Tom's toothpaste, which I think was probably after this the whole case study came around, which is, you know, more of the organic brand that doesn't have the extra preservatives or whatever in it, because that's kind of been the new hit thing, is everything's been organic. But you have your three major people, and you don't, as companies are going, wow, I really don't want to step up and try to compete with these people that have had, majority of the market share for so long, that it's just hard to try to do anything with it. So the next question is, why haven't larger companies already done the spin brush?
I thought this was an interesting question. One thing I think that really put John ahead of these other companies is his network, because he'd worked in so many different industries, and especially his experience in the toy industry, because he had a toy manufacturer build his toothbrush for him, or manufacture the toothbrush. I think that because he probably already had that relationship with those people, that he was able to probably get a pretty good deal on the manufacturing, and it's manufactured by a toy company, not like a major, like a toothbrush company. It's a little different than what the other companies probably do. And I think that the other companies, because they've been doing toothbrush for so long, they probably don't have those same relationships as John has from his previous experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think his time in the toy company, or with the toys, really added to his experience, and also his knowledge base of being able how to do this. Because if you kind of think about an electric toothbrush, it is kind of like a wind-up child's toy or a battery operated child's toy. So you kind of had to have that same mindset of how am I going to get this in a small package that's going to work and be useful. And that's kind of how you have to, and also enticing, because that's how you have to approach children with, here's this brand new toy. It makes a lot of noise. It does cool things. And here you go. But also his connections in that, I think, played a large role in being able to have the toy company be able to create the toothbrush and actually make it work too. I know they did have some problems with like water getting into it, but I think that was probably pretty minor and was probably easily fixable, just with incorporating the right parts or the right person just to see where the flaw was happening.
Yeah, well, and I think that a big thing is too is John's looking at ways to cut costs, and by doing that with the battery, making it battery operated, it's a huge cost cutter. Because you look at the expensive toothbrushes that are electric, and typically they're chargeable, and so you have to put them on a charger.
Yeah.
So you have the expense of that technology, and he didn't necessarily need that for his spin brush. The spin brush just simply needed to be an electric sort of toothbrush, and it didn't need to be chargeable. He made batteries, which cut that cost down for him.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, it could just be who John is. He looks for those opportunities, and the larger companies might have just not looked at it as that way. I mean, it's hard to really answer that question because you don't really know why the larger companies haven't done it. Maybe they just didn't think there was a market for it either.
Or that they didn't want to focus on that kind of price point. They didn't want to have to do the research and development that was expending a bunch of money and what their rate of return was going to be, especially when they already kind of had an established market in the manual toothbrush and the already electric toothbrush. It's like, why kind of throw another wrench into the system and see, we could possibly lose our shirts on this, or it may change the market completely to where maybe people won't buy our higher end products, which we spent a huge amount of time on research and development for. So it's a risk. It's a calculated risk. And I think that John kind of didn't necessarily have anything to lose in the market because he wasn't already in it. So if it would have failed, he wouldn't have really lost anything other than, time and some investors' money. But I know entrepreneurs calculate for that risk instead of investors.
Yeah. No, I agree. I just think the larger companies, they might have thought about it, but they might have just figured they were meeting the need well enough by having the high end and not like the low end toothbrush, but like the manual and the electric.
Yeah.
toothbrush and they might have just figured that that was good enough for the time being.
How much time are we into this?
You know, it doesn't say
It doesn't say.
on this
Okay.
piece, which makes it really annoying because I don't know why they do that.
Okay.
But we started at like 9:40.
Okay, so we're almost 20 minutes into it. Okay. Um, okay, how much is the
Yeah.
spin brush worth and how would you place a value on a company?
Um,
Uh,
oh, sorry.
no worries. Okay, so I think as far as the idea as a spin brush, it's probably worth a significant amount of money just because it is captivating uh, a part of the market share that probably these other companies haven't necessarily thought of. So the patent itself, the idea behind it itself, is probably worth quite a bit. The price point that the spin brush is at, which is $5, $6, $7, depending upon, I think it's reasonable as long as there even if there's a small profit off of each uh, product that's sold as opposed to having other ones of where there's a huge markup um, on it. Uh, but and I wouldn't really know how to place a value on the company other than it would have to be one of the companies that wants to buy it because they want to shut the idea down, or they really like the idea and then want to put their label on it and take it and run with it, where they haven't had to really invest the research and development into it and the trial and error of the product, which can cost a lot of money.
Yeah, I to put a value on it, I just look at basically what kind of money is the company making and are they profitable and are they growing? Those are kind of like some things I try to look at when I'm evaluating companies or analyzing them. So what I did was I took for the year 2000, I took the units they were selling, which was 6,000 daily.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it was daily because I remember thinking that
I
was a
think
lot.
that's what it was too.
And
Yeah,
then I
six
just,
6,000 units per day.
yeah, so I mean, it's probably not right on, but I just took the units they were selling daily and I times it by the cost. And then I times that by 365
Mm-hmm.
to get their annual total sales. And they had an annual total sales of roughly $13.1 million. And so I thought that was pretty impressive because I compare that to the other companies in the case. If you scroll down to where it shows all the like data,
Mm-hmm.
it's exhibit 5A. Yeah, where it goes through the
Yeah.
total sales. And they're actually, I mean, they're right in the middle. They're about maybe average, you could say. I mean, because they're above Colgate and Gillette, but below, I mean, they're
Yeah, Johnson and Johnson and Procter and
Johnson and
Gamble.
Johnson. Yeah, so they're doing, I mean, they're up there in the competition as far as total sales go.
Yeah.
So that's really good. They're doing it. So that's how I would evaluate it. But then you also need to look at the market share where they already hold 0.2%
Mm-hmm.
of the market share. And that's only, I mean, with this market share on Exhibit 4, it only shows the fourth quarter of 1999, which was 0.6.
Mm-hmm.
And I would want more data to be able to really use this because if you can look over a span of time, you can see if they're actually gaining market share or losing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're gaining it, then that will definitely increase their value or potential value. But if it's going down, then that would definitely be something I'd be looking to get out of.
Yeah.
But that's just how I kind of looked at evaluating the value of the company, yeah, on a company.
Well, I'm looking at these other things and I think that I wonder what the private label is because that one had 2 point. 7 of the industry. But I mean, even if they're having 0.2% of the market share and they're still making $13 million of,
Mhm.
projected annual sales, that's still really good.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, that they're just selling. I mean, I think the quantity they're selling is
Well, it's
just great.
6,000 units per day. I mean, like
That's
and
a
I
lot.
don't, yeah, that's a lot. And I think that was trying to figure out where, I don't think that was like in every store either. That was only in a few stores, and I don't think that they were necessarily in Walmart or Target at that time either.
Yeah.
So they were just in some, grocery stores, drugstores, and like mass merchandise stores. So that probably meant, like more like, Rite Aid, that kind, Walgreens, those kind of things. So they hadn't even hit the bigger uh, markets.
Yeah. And I think another advantage that they have is because it's low cost and probably not as high of quality of a toothbrush as
Uh
some of
huh.
the other electric toothbrushes, is they probably don't last as long, I would assume. Or if
Yeah.
they get lost, people are more willing to just go buy another one.
Yeah.
Where with the electric toothbrushes, it's kind of a one and done kind of deal for a while. People aren't going to replace it unless they absolutely have to, and things like that. So I think that that also helps because their demand isn't necessarily going to like spike and then drop,
Mm-hmm.
but it can continue to just kind of grow because I mean, if you lose a $5 toothbrush, you just go buy another one.
Yeah.
Or if you lose a $50 toothbrush, you're like, I'm not no, not sure I'm gonna go buy another $50 toothbrush.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Okay, number 6 is what should John do?
So
I I
go ahead.
think I already know what the answer is to this just because of I already think I already know what they did, which was I think they licensed with Crest because I remember the spin brush coming out. Um and when it was all about, and I think it's a Crest product. So knowing what they kind of already did, uh I think that licensing is probably their best bet. Um, because then they can still kind of maintain a little bit of control of their company, and they can also, negotiate good terms on, stating that, look, for everything that's sold, we want a percentage of it, and it can go on until you guys, choose not to sell the product anymore, or it, loses its market value, so that you can still have money consistently coming in. And then he can kind of also move on to, looking for new ideas because he's kind of given a little bit of his control over to another company to worry about the fine details of things. Um, but I kind of look at also, if he just flat out sold it, his idea may be pushed to the side because I know that there are competitors that buy stuff because they just want it to simply go away as opposed to, take it and run with it. I don't imagine that one of the toothbrush companies would do that because I think he's showed them there's a niche that's available and that it can be taken and used. But I would say that, and also he runs a risk of, continuing going on his own, of trying to, take that market share and expanding and doing that. Uh, just because I don't think he necessarily would have the means to be able to do the marketing that may probably be necessary to push the product up to the next level. And, Walmart and Target, if they did expand into those things, it may drive the product on its own, but they may also want advertising. So they may want commercials, they may want radio ads, they may want whatever, and they may not find an investor that's willing to give them that amount of money to run the risk with advertising. Advertising is one of those things of where it either works or it doesn't, and you have to have the right thing because I've watched some like Target ads of where they've really done an excellent job, and like I can still remember their marketing scheme that they came up with. And then there's other ones where they've run them, and I'm just like, I hate Target. I don't want to go to Target. That ad sucked. So that may be the risk that they run by trying to stay on their own. I would say their best bet is to license and kind of back away from it a little bit and let somebody else kind of take the burden of the advertising and the mass production on, as long as they respected the development that's already been done.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I I was kind of torn. I was like, I would either sell it or license it out. I definitely wouldn't keep it because I think what gave them, I think their biggest strength in a way, and the reason they were so successful was because they were the only toothbrush like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they were able to they kind of captured that whole little market of that group of people because they were the only product. And I think, well, if I walked into a store and were to see a Crest brush and then like a brush I didn't really know the name of, I'd probably buy the Crest brush if they were the same price.
Yeah.
And I just think they had that jump on the market. And then as these other companies are going to enter that market, I think that's a huge danger to what you've developed to be competing directly with them.
Yeah.
While they were in their own little thing, I think it was totally fine and a great opportunity to jump on. But I think it was a huge risk to stay there and to try to build and compete with these huge major companies.
Well, and the other thing that he didn't know was, where the other companies stood. They may have been just, a couple of months away from already having their own version of the spin brush out on the market. And that probably would have tanked them because, as you said, you're going to look at it and go, okay, it's the same price point. I'm going to go with a name that I've dealt with before, and that's Crest or, Colgate or Oral-B or whatever it is, rather than trying just to take the off-brand market or, off-brand label if they're the same price. Like when I go grocery shopping, if I notice that there's the name brand canned vegetables is the same price as the store brand, I'm just going to get the name brand because that's what I'm going to do because they're the same price. So unless they found another way to really distinguish themselves away from the other big companies, then they'll probably be stuck with losing their market share that they've already had.
Yeah, I just think that's a huge risk for them. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, if the other companies, take this idea and run with it, they'll probably end up, totally kind of being pushed to the back and not just slowly diminish and disappear from the market.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have just tried to build a company. Not saying like he couldn't, because I mean, maybe that's really negative to say, but I think the risks of competing with those companies is too high.
Mm-hmm.
To do, especially I don't quite know enough about licensing out products, so I just said I would sell it. I would take the money while my company was worth as much as it was worth. Take the money and run, basically. Go pursue something new. Live on a beach for a few years like he seems like he likes to do. And
well, and I think from, reading enough of these case studies that most of these entrepreneurs they can be, a couple of weeks into developing this and saying, oh yeah, we're going to get this off the ground. And, and then it starts to progress and get off the ground, but they're already looking at what the next thing they're going to do is. It's not, so he's probably already got 5 things sitting in his back pocket going, which one am I going to choose next? I just need to get this, this baby out of the crib and into walking and being on their own, and then I'm going to be done and I'm moving on to the next thing. So it's not like he's not going to have something to do. So I would say sell it too. I don't think I would try to keep, raising this one. I would just be like, hey, see ya, we're done. So
yeah, well, and it just seems like he does that. Reading like the background on him,
mm-hmm.
He just seems to create things and then just sell them.
Yeah.
And then go live on a beach or go golfing. So
Well, and a lot of app developers, like software developers and things, that's what they've done. I mean, they rarely stick. I think one of the few people that has actually stuck with the product that they've came up with is Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook. Everybody else has sold whatever
oh,
they've come up with, and they've usually sold it to Facebook, ironically. But it's,
that's
they've all come
funny.
up with these great ideas. They make a lot of money off of them, and then somebody says, "Well, I want that," and they just sell it, and it's like, "Okay, see ya, we're done," and then they're off to the next thing. So,
Nice.
okay. Number 7, how do you analyze a case?
I feel like we talked about this at the beginning, but I can't remember if it was before I pushed the start recording or
I
after.
think it was before. I no, I mean, I think it was after, about
After
how we just answered the question, these questions, and then we followed the outline of the case analysis
yes, I
thing.
do. Yeah, it was after. I remember that. Yeah. So
Sorry,
I
my
think
dog
we
is
already
wanting to
covered
play
that
fetch.
question.
I'm sorry,
I
say
mean,
that
is
one
there
more time.
anything Sorry, I was gonna say, I just think we already covered that question. Is there
Yeah.
anything else you think you want to say about it, or just move on?
No, I can't think of anything besides just reading it and then answering the questions, because that's pretty much what we're given. I mean, it's not, I don't really think it's asking us to, go into any intense detail on why would you figure this out or how this would be done. So other cases I think may be more complicated and be able to have a more in-depth answer to this
Yeah.
question. But I think this one is fairly simple and straightforward. So I don't know if there has to be much discussion on that one.
Okay. All right. And then what questions to ask, or did you learn about? I put 3 down. I put, what does this industry need? Has the industry been developed or sitting still? What do the people in this industry need to meet their need? Those were my questions that I came up with, or I got an insight from reading the case.
I didn't really think of questions because I kind of stopped at that portion. I'm not good at developing questions. They usually come afterward when I sit there and I go through everything I talked about, and then thought, oh, that would have been a good question to ask. Um, I think something that I'd want to ask an entrepreneur, and just in general, but not necessarily in this case, of what keeps your passion alive for this. Like, you've run through all of these, doors closing or them opening, or that of like, how do you keep going day after day of maybe not having the success that you feel like you should have instantaneously. That would probably be one question, is just how do you keep the drive going, mostly because I know that I get pretty exhausted or just kind of down and out about stuff, and I'm just like, why do I keep doing this exactly? This isn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
And then another question, I don't know, I can't think of any other questions. I guess just more or less I just get stuck on how do people just stay determined. That's always something that I've always wondered, and that's just about anything, though, not necessarily just business and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I would agree. All
Okay,
right.
should we do the summary? Because I think we're about 40 minutes into it now.
Yeah, we should be getting close to being done.
And I don't think it necessarily has to be exactly an hour, but I
Yeah,
think close enough to an hour.
just at about an hour. And when you have a whole group, it's easier to hit the hour mark because
Yeah,
it's more than just two people's opinions. When it's just two people, it kind of goes faster than
yeah.
a whole group. But I don't know. I don't know what to summarize. I feel like we've already done that.
Well, let's just throw a summary together. So do you want to look at the time and we can mark it?
I would, but I don't know how to look at the time. I'll have to go back on YouTube and
Oh,
find
okay. My dog has decided he wants to play fetch while I try to do homework. It doesn't necessarily work out so hot, but
it.
so I opened the window with the hopes that he would like be more interested in staring at the window, and that hasn't worked either. Okay, summary. John Osher has developed the spin brush toothbrush, which is I don't want to say low end, lower price point electric toothbrush for the dental market. Um, it is kind of produced in mass quantities. It's available in most places. And so they're at kind of a point. They're okay. Their company's been pretty successful so far. We suggested or kind of came up with the number that he has about 13 million in annual sales. They're selling about 6,000 units per day. And that's not included being in Walmart or Target, which are some of the largest retailers in the United States. So that could expand based upon uh, expansion into those two stores. They have had some trouble with their product as far as water getting into the product, but they seem to have in the ways of fixing that. And also, it doesn't seem to have deterred customers from wanting the product. Oh, sorry, he just jumped. And so consumers aren't really affected by the whole thing. And so now they're kind of at a crossroads of what to do. They have decided on three options of whether they're going to sell the company, whether they're going to license the product to one of the larger game players, or they're going to run the product on their own and see how far they can go with it. We discussed all of these options and we decided that the best option is probably licensing. The second best option would be to sell it, and the third option, which we neither one of us agreed upon, was to keep going, and to license, to run the company themselves and to keep going. It's just that we never knew. We don't know what the other companies have in their bag of goods. We never know whether they're going to come out with the least, less expensive electric toothbrush, and it could kill the small market share that Dr. John's spin brush already has. Does that seem like a good summary?
Sounds like we summarized it.
Okay.
All
Anything
right.
you want to add?
I think you got it. I think we covered that very well. If they want more info, it's throughout the recordings.
Yep, there we go.
You can watch it. Okay, I'm going to stop broadcasting.
Okay.